8:33 a.m. Strait of Hormuz, northern transit lane, 14 nautical miles from the Iranian coastline. An Iranian coastal missile battery just locked its fire control radar onto USS Cole. Not painted it, not pinged it, locked. Full weapons-grade targeting solution. The kind that precedes a launch by seconds. Every alarm in the destroyer's electronic support measures suite triggered simultaneously. The watch officer had 30 seconds to determine whether the lock was a deliberate act of war, a technical exercise, or a political signal dressed up in the language of weapons systems. And he had to make that determination before the commanding officer could reach the bridge. What the crew did in those 30 seconds, and what the U.S. Navy and the Pentagon did in the 72 hours that followed, set the operational rules for every strait transit that came after. Welcome to Navy Poverline, where we go beyond the official statements to the tactical and strategic reality that shapes how the U.S. Navy operates in the most dangerous waterways on Earth. USS Cole carries specific weight in the U.S. Navy that is not purely tactical. In October 2000, the original USS Cole was struck by a suicide boat bomb in the port of Aden, killing 17 sailors and wounding 39. The ship that bears that name today carries the history of that attack in everything from its crew's awareness to the way its commanding officers approach threat assessment in contested environments. Nobody aboard USS Cole treats an electronic threat indicator as background noise. The culture of vigilance that follows a ship named for an attack is not incidental. It is structural. The electronic support measures suite aboard an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer is one of the most sophisticated passive detection systems in the world. It monitors the electromagnetic spectrum continuously, cataloging every radar emission within range, comparing them against a library of known signatures, and classifying each one against a threat matrix that ranges from routine commercial traffic to weapons-grade fire control. The ESM watch is not glamorous work. It is hours of monitoring ambient emissions, weather radar, commercial navigation systems, air traffic control, routine military surveillance, interrupted by moments that require immediate, precise action. At 8:33 a.m., the ESM suite interrupted its routine. The signal type identified was a Noor anti-ship missile fire control radar operating in full targeting lock mode. The Noor system, Iran's derivative of the Chinese C-802 guidance architecture, emits a distinctive targeting signal in the final phase of weapons engagement. A high-frequency, high-power pulse sequence that feeds targeting coordinates to the missile's seeker head. When that signal is active and directed at your ship, you are in the final stage of the engagement sequence. The missile has not launched, but the solution is complete. The battery that had locked was identified by the ESM system's emission geolocation function within 11 seconds. Its position was on the Iranian coastline, 14 nautical miles northeast of Cole's position. The battery type was assessed as a Noor coastal defense missile site, a hardened installation in a network of similar sites that Iran has constructed along both the Strait of Hormuz coastline and the Gulf of Oman shore over the preceding decade. These sites are not improvised. They are permanent military infrastructure, pre-surveyed, pre-targeted, maintained by trained crews who conduct regular exercises. Their purpose is precisely this: to hold every vessel transiting the strait at risk for the duration of the transit. The watch officer's report reached the bridge in 18 seconds. The CO arrived at 31 seconds. The lock was still active. In the 13 seconds between the watch officer's report and the CO reaching the bridge, the watch officer had done 4 things. He had confirmed the lock signal type against the library. Triple confirmation, not single. He had initiated the ESM recording function to preserve the full signal record. He had ordered the bridge to notify 5th Fleet duty officer with the ESM data. And he had brought the ship's Harpoon anti-ship missile system to readiness status. Not armed, not targeted, but powered up and ready to receive a targeting solution in the shortest possible time if the order came. He had not overstepped his authority. He had used exactly the authority his training gave him. The CO took in the picture in approximately 4 seconds. ESM lock confirmed. Battery identified. Position known. Harpoon at readiness. 5th Fleet notified. She faced the decision that every surface warfare commander in the Strait of Hormuz has thought about, and no official doctrine fully resolves. A foreign military installation has locked a weapons-grade targeting radar on your ship. The lock precedes a launch by seconds. You have a Harpoon missile in readiness with a targeting solution available. You have legal authority under the law of armed conflict to respond to an imminent threat with preemptive defensive fire. The lock is the definition of imminent. You also do not know if the lock is operational, a genuine pre-launch targeting sequence, or political, a deliberate signal, a demonstration of capability, an act of coercion designed to force a response that Iran can frame as American aggression. The distinction between those two scenarios is invisible from inside the Strait of Hormuz. Both look identical on the ESM display. Both have been used by the IRGCN at various points in the preceding decade. A fire control lock is a coercive political signal, what naval analysts call a demonstrative lock, had been documented in the Gulf region on at least 9 previous occasions in the 5 years before this incident. In every one of those 9 cases, the lock had been maintained for between 8 and 34 seconds and then released without a launch. In every case, the U.S. vessel had continued its transit and logged the incident. 9 cases of demonstrative locks, 0 launches. The 10th lock was the one USS Cole was experiencing at 08:33. The CO requested authority to preemptively engage the battery at 08:34 and 12 seconds, 91 seconds after the initial lock detection. She transmitted the request with full ESM data, the battery's confirmed position, and a clear statement that she was holding the decision pending 5th Fleet's response. The lock was still active. At 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, the duty admiral received the request at 08:35 and 4 seconds. 51 seconds after Cole's transmission. He had a ship in the strait under active fire control lock, a confirmed Iranian coastal battery, and a commanding officer requesting authority for preemptive engagement. The duty admiral requested a 60-second hold. In those 60 seconds, 3 parallel processes were running. The JAG officer confirmed the legal framework for preemptive self-defense against an active fire control lock. The intelligence section queried available real-time ISR over the battery position, and the duty admiral placed a direct call to the CENTCOM watch floor. The ISR query produced imagery of the battery site at 08:35 and 29 seconds. The imagery showed the battery's missile launchers in an elevated configuration consistent with a pre-launch posture. It was not conclusive. The elevation angle was within the normal range for both training posture and combat posture. The intelligence officer assessed it as ambiguous, could not distinguish training from attack preparation. Ambiguous. The lock was still active. At 08:36 and 14 seconds, 3 minutes and 1 second after initial detection, the fire control lock released. The ESM suite recorded the signal shift from weapons-grade targeting lock to standby mode within a single pulse interval. The release was clean and immediate. No launch, no missile, no warning shot. The lock was gone. The battery had been hot for 3 minutes and 1 second. Cole continued its transit. The CO transmitted a full incident report to 5th Fleet at 08:41. The ship transited the remaining 11 nautical miles of the strait without further incident and entered the Gulf of Oman at 09:27. The immediate aftermath was managed at 3 levels simultaneously. At the tactical level, the incident was logged. The ESM recordings were preserved and transmitted to Naval Intelligence, and the CO submitted a detailed after-action report that addressed the decision timeline, the authority request, and her assessment of the lock as demonstrative rather than operational. A judgment she based on the 3-minute duration, which was longer than the expected pre-launch window for a Noor system in a genuine attack sequence. At the operational level, 5th Fleet conducted a formal review of the Strait Transit Escort Doctrine. The review addressed a specific gap, the 91 seconds between lock detection and authority request. In those 91 seconds, the commanding officer had been managing the situation correctly, but the time required to escalate to flag level for preemptive engagement authority against a shore-based target meant that in a genuine attack scenario, a lock that preceded a launch in 8 to 15 seconds rather than 3 minutes, no authority would have arrived in time. The ship would have had to act on the CO's authority alone or absorb a missile. The review produced a revised authority matrix. Under the updated framework, a commanding officer in the strait with a confirmed weapons-grade lock from an identified hostile battery had preemptive engagement authority without flag approval if the lock exceeded a specific set of parameters that indicated operational rather than demonstrative intent. The specific parameters are classified. The principle is not: a ship in the strait cannot wait 4 minutes for authority when the weapons timeline is measured in seconds. At the strategic level, the incident triggered a formal diplomatic communication to Iran through back-channel routes. The communication was unambiguous. A demonstrative fire control lock on a U.S. warship in international waters constituted a hostile act under international law. Any future such lock would be treated as an imminent attack and responded to accordingly. Iran's response, delivered through the Omani intermediary channel 22 hours later, denied that the lock had occurred. The response stated that the battery had been conducting a scheduled training exercise and that any electronic emissions detected by U.S. vessels were consistent with routine military operations in Iranian territorial waters. The strait is not Iranian territorial waters. The battery was not conducting a routine exercise. The ESM recording captured every microsecond of the 3-minute 1-second lock in technical detail that left no ambiguity about what it was. Iran knew the U.S. had the recording. The denial was not meant to be believed. It was the diplomatic language that allowed the incident to close without a formal exchange of fire. 2 weeks after the incident, a second U.S. destroyer transited the strait. The Noor battery site was active on passive monitoring throughout the transit. It did not lock. 3 weeks after the incident, the battery site was observed by satellite conducting what appeared to be a maintenance evolution. Crews working on the launcher infrastructure. Overhead imagery analysts noted that the launcher elevation mechanism had been adjusted. Post-observation technical assessment suggested the adjustment may have been related to a calibration exercise, or it may have been the battery crew doing maintenance after the most intense operational sequence the site had experienced in years. The distinction was assessed at low confidence. What was assessed at high confidence was the following. The 3-minute demonstrative lock had been a deliberate, authorized IRGCN action. The battery commander had not acted unilaterally. The lock had required a command decision at a level above the site. Someone in the IRGCN chain had ordered a fire control lock on a U.S. destroyer in international waters, sustained it for 3 minutes, and released it. That order came from somewhere. The intelligence community's assessment of the triggering event pointed to a specific U.S. action 11 days before the incident. A U.S. Air Force B-52 Stratofortress had conducted a visible, low-altitude overflight of the Strait of Hormuz, in what CENTCOM described as a presence flight, demonstrating U.S. reach and resolve in the region. The B-52 had overflown the strait at 5,000 feet, low enough to be observed from the Iranian coast, high enough to be clearly a military demonstration rather than a transit. Iran's response to a strategic bomber demonstration was a fire control lock on a surface combatant. The asymmetry of the response was deliberate. The IRGCN does not match American shows of force with equivalent demonstrations. It finds the adjacent vulnerability and applies pressure there. The B-52 demonstration said, "We can reach you from altitude." The fire control lock said, "We can reach you from the shore." Both messages were accurate. Both were delivered. The crew of USS Cole logged the incident, completed the transit, and conducted their next evolution. The battery crew on the Iranian coastline logged their own account of the morning. Both sets of logs describe an incident in which nobody fired, in which the closest point of the Strait of Hormuz transit passed without a missile leaving a launcher, in which the world's most critical maritime choke point remained open for the 6 tankers per hour that passed through it, while a fire control radar spent 3 minutes painting a U.S. destroyer. The strategic value of the Strait of Hormuz depends on its remaining passable. Iran knows this. The United States knows this. The cost of a closure, to Iran's own economy as much as to global energy markets, disciplines the escalation on both sides. The fire control lock sat at the precise boundary of that discipline. It was costly to the U.S., 3 minutes of maximum tension, a CO waiting for authority that arrived after the lock released, a crew that ran through every scenario in the threat matrix in real time. It was costless to Iran. No launch, no retaliation, no diplomatic consequence beyond a denial that neither side expected to be believed. The battery is still there. The next destroyer to transit the strait will pass 14 nautical miles from it. That is not a coincidence of geography. That is the operational architecture of coercion in the Strait of Hormuz. The battery doesn't have to fire to do its job. It has to exist, and it has to demonstrate periodically that it can lock. 3 minutes and 1 second was the demonstration. The USS Cole, the ship named for sailors killed in a harbor in Yemen 20 years ago, absorbed that demonstration and continued its transit. That is what it means to operate in the Gulf. Stay vigilant, stay informed. I'll see you in the next one.